Yeah. So did you do some previous reading also? The things regarding the things that you mentioned?
Material that you suggest, I have a look, and the P3 model, so the model that made the model for the model to integrate in life love, principle, and purpose. And suggest that it's a circle of the three things, and then refinement from love to principle through rationalization, articulation, so thinking, logical thinking.
Anyhow, that is very necessary because the topic that you also thought would be nice, and I think it will be very good to start having a set of conversations on is regarding the effectiveness. I am not specifically going in the segment of effective altruism at this moment because I want that to come naturally, as I've talked in personally to you. I don't think that it should, like, it's like the final theorem or answer that one should reach, but derivation is more important. If someone knows the derivation of the theorem, then they can like accept the theorem in a more natural way. So just don't but if they don't understand the derivation, you just tell them the final formula, it will have to be memorized or forced upon to them. It's not a natural thing. So yeah, that's why I don't want to directly jump to that thing, but we can just talk and build from basic fundamental blocks to that. And yeah, the angle that you chose was again a good thing about requirement of intellectual or logical procedure for effectiveness. And yeah, so first let me just try to how I saw it, or when you told me about it, how I thought about it, or how I thought to structure this whole thing is about generally to do anything. There is two kind of forces that we need, or two kind of reasoning that we have in general as humans. One is driven by like not driven by, but based on intellectual reasoning and thought process. We either do things by that, or again by because we have some emotional connect or some non-rational or non-intellectual process. So, but again, given the current time and the best way that it is to work with a lot of situations like this in professionalism is intellectually or in a rational form. We go with the emotional flow in other aspects of our life, like personalism and other stuff, not with the professionalism. It's a different thing that I have a theory in which both are mixed properly. But yeah, so as you pointed out and you talk about effectiveness, did you have anything in mind, like effectiveness in anything or just working effective? What was your thought initially?
Not anything very specific. Effectiveness in achieving the goals that you set for yourself.
Yeah, that goal doesn't have to necessarily align with altruism or with impact or with research. Nothing specific. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, in a way, well, we can talk about the distinction when it's aligned and when it's not. But there are things that are valid always. When you're effective, you set a goal and you achieve it and effectively. And there is a more integral idea, more a whole idea of effectiveness, which involves also alignment in setting the goals, so in setting the objectives.
Okay. So, okay, let me just start with your thoughts to understand where you are at this moment. So, what do you think of this thing as? Like, what do you think is the purpose of intellect in effectiveness in general? And then we can probably navigate towards some specific goal.
I think that effectiveness measures how sincerely you want your objectives. You want to achieve your objectives. At least the attempt of being effective means that you sincerely want to achieve your objective. If you don't care about effectiveness, you don't care about the objectives that you set. So now it might be a good strategy not to care about the goals, to care about the process, so you don't stress too much about it and you are more effective. But now it's a strategy. I mean, really wanting to achieve your goals means that you sincerely believe that they are valuable goals. And so you want to be effective. And even though then there is a thing but why I suggest that we speak also about self-acceptance in this framework that you suggest, because when love is substituted, which happens very often, very often, and it happened to me, and I told you in a private conversation, and I it happened without me realizing, no? Until a point. Then I realized, of course, but then I didn't realize for a while that it was not love the center of the scheme, but the center of this of the graph that you suggest, of the diagram that you suggest. This, in the place of love was taken by the ego, by wanting to be recognized, by wanting to be seen as a competent person. And this happens because when you do things and you do them effectively, and people recognize and people give you the recognition that you're doing things right, that of course they are boosting your ego. There's no matter. So you have to be careful, you have to be aware, you have to be really conscious of this thing in order not the ego substitute what you really care for. So not to be put in the place of love, because if you put ego instead of love, you have another diagram that works exactly the same, except that it doesn't work exactly the same. I mean, the diagram describes as well that process, but the process is completely different, and it can be very unhealthy.
Yeah, it will be like a flip thing. If you flip love with ego, the rest of the elements will flip continuously as well. Like instead of let's say having a value system that you will develop from that principles, instead of having a principle system, you will develop a set of preferences that will not be again aligned with you. So the whole thing will start flipping. Similar kind of thing can be referenced in the thing that I talked regarding free will and determinism. I made a video about that as well. In that also there were a set of elements like courage and a lot of confrontation and other element. And in that also, if you just flip one of the element, all other elements just cascade with that. Because in generally this is a human nature that I have seen in a lot of things. If there's a quotation also, the way that you do something is the way that you do everything. Basically, if like there's a whole structure that you're working with, and if you think, okay, I will be dishonest here and it will not affect my other part, that is not how it works. Because if you flip one of the elements, then whole circle and the whole system flips according to that thing. That is how in general we work. And it's also about the in a way pressure. Like if we have 10 things that are good into us and one thing that we want to flip in a negative side, it will take a lot of resistance for us to flip in a negative way. But if we are able to flip that because of some strong external pressure, be it wanting something, desire of something, or fear from something, be it any kind of pressure, then the rest things get flipped very easily, and the whole person that we become after that initial change is a complete different person. And so again, it happens in the opposite way as well, as you talked about, like initially working with ego thing, and then if you flip that with love thing, then the whole rest of the things will flip as well, and it will just fall in places. This has also been, like, I guess, written in Buddhism a lot. I have seen some mentions of this thing in Buddhism literature, how the Eightfold Path, Noble Eightfold Path, how you just get right path, right, some rights aligned with the right values, then rest of them fall into place. And it happens in a lot of things. It happens in physics. It happens basically it's like a natural thing. In physics, if you just flip one of the poles, then all other poles of the system will align to that thing. So yeah, it's a natural thing. And talking about the effectiveness and in general acceptance thing, well, that naturally comes later on if we talk in a structured way. Initially, just talking about this segment that we started with regarding effectiveness and intellectual. How does logic and intellect play roles in being effective? So as you were mentioning regarding the being an OBP kind of working in an OBP manner, output-based processing manner, and not being very not output-based processing. So in that, intellect plays specifically because generally there is these two kind of fundamental dichotomies that works, that is dynamics and kinematics. Why do we do something and how do we do something? So generally, why do we do something is mostly driven by emotion and how do we feel about it. and what our value system is, how much do we actually care about things. That is why we do something generally. But how is completely disconnected from that. You might have very strong passion to do good for the world, but you might not be able to do any good for the world in any case, because they are not directly and necessarily correlated. If you have a strong why, that doesn't necessarily mean you have a good how also. And at the same time, if you are just doing a lot of good for the world but you don't have a strong why, you will fail, and your motivation will drop, your inspiration will drop. So in machine that we have orthogonality thesis, it's in a way it's like orthogonality thesis. They are both independent, and you need to align them at the in a like y is equal to x form. You need to have y as much as you have how. If you have any of them in more amount, you will, like if you have more how than y, then you will, after a point, you will get demotivated and you will come back to a state of your y level, and you'll feel like that, okay, I'm lazy, I'm not able to do something in my life, like your value preference alignment. And if you have more why than you have how, then you will feel like I'm not being able to be productive and do actually convert my thought. In both of the cases, you'll feel regret and like a lost cause in both of the cases. So equivalence alignment is very important. Talking about the why thing, this is why I try to have the reference of my P3 thing, the love, principles and purpose thing, because in that the why and how is in a way very interconnected, because in real life also kinematics and dynamics are very interconnected. So after you get a why, the strength of that why lets you find the how. Yeah, we can frame this in the context of will and way. If you have will, you'll find the way. So will, if you have a strong enough will, if you have a strong enough why, you'll find a way, you'll find a how. So the both are independent. And if you are not able to find a good enough how using a lot of permutation, that is just an indication of not having a good enough will, not having a good enough why. And there's again a quotation of Nietzsche as well in this segment. A man who has a why can go through any how, like that kind of thing. So at this moment, I'm recording all of them. But in this specific case, what I want to talk about is we are just specifically dealing with the how segment of the thing. How can we be more effective? Why comes from the basic principle thing. That is what I have the second point. That is why I gave you the drive for life. How should we?
But, sorry, Madhusudhan. Let me introduce an element. Just if you don't want to develop, it will be just a parenthesis, because you said a very interesting thing before, that you can flip. You have two different systems: a diagram with the love and the same diagram substituted by ego, and you can go with some effort from one diagram to another. Now, there is a difference. If you are driven by ego, you don't care about love. But the ego is a strong force, no? And for everybody. So either you have love or not. But well, unless something really inspires you and you want more love in your life, but no, I can imagine much more easily that you are driven, that you are motivated by love, but then at a point, ego sets in without you realizing, and then you want to go back at the initial state in which love is the main thing, and that again, it's self-acceptance that I think it's the main.
Exactly.
And also it has to do with efficiency, because yes, it's true that if you have a strong why, then you find a how, but you have to have a lot of self-acceptance, because you fail, and at the point the why may weaken too much unless you are able to accept everything that happens.
Yeah, surely.
So sorry for this introduction, so for this parenthesis.
No, it's fine, because this is one of the conclusions and this is one of the thoughts that I was supposed to come. I had this in my mind, but again, I thought to just reach to this point naturally and not like just directly come onto this point. And I was just setting up my basic logic about how these things are related and all, and then I would come to this point of how acceptance is the thing that drives this thing. Anyhow, what I was saying regarding this whole thing about this flip thing. So in machines we have this logic of terminal goal and instrumental goal. So there's this in meta logic about terminal goal and instrumental goal, is that a terminal goal can only be wrong in correspondence to another terminal goal. So basically no terminal goal is ever wrong. That is the whole point. That is basically what you are saying. The person who only cares about ego doesn't cares about love. He will care about love if he has love as a terminal goal, but the ego is the instrumental goal. Then he can understand and see love, ego as a negative thing. So terminal goals can only be right. It can never be wrong, because it can be wrong in context of some other terminal goal. But to have the context of another terminal goal, that you must have your terminal goal as an instrumental goal. To put it up more simply, I think it talks about flexibility in a way. In machines, it's called corrigibility problem. In AI safety and whole alignment segment, but yeah, it's basically about being flexibility in a way that you should never be too much stick or too much joined to your terminal goals in a way that you cannot ever see or consider other terminal goals, and you cannot just even process and accept that, no matter which one you have, because like you cannot decide if your loved one is the actual and the best one at the moment. It might be, but you can never be that sure. So yeah, I think it comes from the Socratic method, or like all I know is I know nothing, that kind of philosophy or logic, epistemic humility. And this is one of the negative things about ego, the ego thing. The ones with the ego are the hardest to convince that there's something exists without an outside ego, and that goes the opposite way with the love people. They can consider other perspective as well. So its flaw is something that is also stopping it from going away from the flaw. So yeah, the whole ego thing is hard, but at the same time, as I said, if you are able to just cross this line a bit, and if you're able to flip it once, anyhow, like through some realization or through some life or death moment, so through some any strong event or moment, once you're able to flip this thing, if you're able to see the terminal goal of love, and if you're able to see the insignificance of ego, then the whole thing flips. Like it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of this is the word that I used once, psychological surgery. You need to like rewire your complete mindset, complete way that you looked at life and principles and purpose of life. But it can, like after that, at least you can get started to doing that after having that kind of view towards having love as the eternal goal. And yeah, in all of them, again, I'm just trying to navigate back to the topic of intellect and effectiveness. So okay, in a precise way, what as per you is the specific role of intellectualism or logic in being effective, or yeah,
I think that it has a crucial role. I mean, intellectual knowledge, it's all about being more effective. It's then intellectualism, intellectual knowledge takes a life on its own, but it starts with asking yourself how you can be more effective, how you can change the world. And it's knowledge about its generalization, its abstraction. And the abstraction are powerful. Okay. Now the thing is that take science, and take what allowed us to do. We didn't do it in 200,000 years that we've existed as human species like we are now. We didn't manage to do 1,000th of what we were able to do in the last 400 years. Because this is a very powerful, it's a superpower of the human species. And it's a superpower because it has self-correcting mechanism. In this, I'm sure that there are other philosophers that I could cite, but this I learned from Yuval Harari. That's my inspiration in this line of reasoning. Now, the thing is that intellectually, there are also bad intellectualizations, and for instance. The video you suggested to me, the difference between Trotsky and Stalin, that I guess a friend of yours was speaking about the difference. It's a very good example of this. Bad intellectualization means that the set of ideas, the knowledge that you are building, doesn't relate anymore with what happens in the real world. It doesn't have self-correcting mechanisms that make it match with the reality, make it approach reality. This is, I think that Popper, the philosopher of science, I think that he got the main idea, the main characteristic of science self-correcting mechanism. A scientist dares to be wrong. I mean, he makes a statement precise enough that can be disproven. No, then that's that's the power of science. Now we are not fascinated by science. Well, we are also fascinated by science, but we are not fascinated by knowledge because it approaches reality. We are fascinated by knowledge for different reasons. And so knowledge can also be used to fool people, to fool ourselves. And I think that what happened to many communists, they swapped terminal goal with instrumental goals and all sort of mistakes. But now the difference between Trotsky and Stalin, that Stalin managed to achieve power because he had a very good, effective knowledge on how to achieve power. He knew how to do it. He was an intelligent man. He was an evil man, but he was intelligent, and so he managed to achieve. Well, Trotsky was not stupid, was not naive. He was all. I don't think we should make the mistake of seeing as a victim of Stalinism. He wanted the true communism, the good one. Trotsky was able to do terrible things in the name of communism, because he also swapped the true terminal goal of having every in a world in which everybody is happy, and communism. Now, one is instrumental, the other is terminal. He swapped it. He also made this mistake, so he was able to do terrible things in the name of communism. Now, the thing is that you need the good knowledge. You need the knowledge that makes you effective. It's intellectual. It's abstract. You don't necessarily see its value at first sight. Okay, but it has value because at least it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I don't have much, as I said, much background regarding Stalin and other people. But in general, the whole segment of political philosophy and this resolves on this factor that both are knowledge. They are different set of knowledge. Similar to I have read about Machiavelli enough. Recently, also read about him. So it's like if someone has the knowledge of creating a gun, or how can we get a small metal move through space very fast. That is the knowledge that we're talking about here. Now the why part, the terminal part, how are we using that knowledge, or how are we using that gun? That's the important part. And at the same time, it's like seeing it in a teleological way, like wanting a specific outcome, and then which path should we take to effectively reach that. So Stalin and I think in this case both of them had good, like, it's not about knowledge, it's not about intellect, it's not about intellectualism, that one was intellect and Stalin was not intellectual, and that's why he was able to get control over people, and the other was intellectual. It's about which kind of effect that they wanted and how much they are okay to go with that. But in this kind of situation, as I said, there is this why and how. So they both had a strong enough how. They both had, I think, good enough of intellect, as you are saying. But the why was very different. The purpose why Stalin was wanting that power, and the drive he had for that, and the drive and the why that the other person had is very different. And at the same time, it's also this general thing regarding politics I can see, regarding religion I can see, and regarding, I think, any general case where philosophy has been tried to apply on a mass level. Again, religion and politics are two very good examples. This is a quotation by Machiavelli itself, that politics and morals don't have anything in relation. So it generally goes like this, and people who generally go with intellect a lot of time, trying to get things done in a good way, they generally get to also drawn towards moral system, and that kind of stops, and that becomes a resistance for them to get in effectiveness. So this is a general dilemma kind of thing that I can hear among people. I think we also talked about it good enough, that should one initially do some chaotic thing, or in a way non-moral thing, to get power so that they can do a good thing. and after that, like basically in case of Stalin, so basically in the other case, he did not get power first and he was just using his intellect way. Okay, so what is the general thought in this case? Should someone do initially some wrong thing or some non-moral thing with intellect so that in the end he can get power and do good thing? What do you think about this?
In principle, if we lived in a different universe, I could say yes, okay, if I do terrible things and avoid things that are even more terrible, no? Okay, go for it. Do terrible things. Grab power in order to avoid even more terrible things. That's warranted. Okay, go for it. In this world, if you do terrible things, and if you have an excuse, you want to avoid even more terrible things, you are doomed to be the worst, the worst dictator or the worst oppressor ever. It is. It always. I don't know. I'm not very knowledgeable about history. But I don't know any case. I think I would know one or two that was really cynical because he was able to do terrible stuff, but he really wanted or she really wanted to prevent even worse things. I don't know any case. In every case we study, if you allow yourself to abuse power, then you corrupt yourself. There's no way out of it. I don't think that. So, and also because there is another practical reason. Then to some small amount, okay. Okay, you can do. You can lie, for instance, a very, very trivial example. No, when you say, okay, I'm fine, and you are lying to your mother not to make her worry, you are doing something bad in order to prevent something even worse. You are lying, which is not good, but making your mother worry, no, it's even worse. So you go for the lesser for the lesser problem. But when you speak about politics and power and plans and nations and very complex systems, in order to grab power and to stick with a plan and to convince people that you are that sort of guy that is going to take power and do those sort of things, then there's no way out of it. You're not going to use power in a wise way if you grabbed it in a very unwholesome way, in a very cynical and cruel way. There's no way out of it. And also you set in motion a mechanism that you can control 100%. So it's not, we cannot compare history, we cannot compare a political project that stretches in years ahead. 5 years, I want to change things, and so I'll grab power and I do those beautiful things, even though I have to do terrible things before. It's not a risiko table game. It's not a chess game. You don't know exactly what is going to happen. If your next move is grabbing power cruelly, not dishonestly, non-legitimately, then that has terrible consequences that you can't control. So that's why, in principle, okay, do terrible things in order to prevent even more terrible things. I agree, in principle. In this universe, it doesn't work. Don't do it. Be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, at least to some extent. Of course, it's not. Nothing is absolute. Nothing is so clear cut. So. Okay, if I were a politician, I would lie from time to time. There's no way out of it. Okay, but in this case, I think that the extent to which you do things, it really matters.
Okay, so in general, there is this whole quotation and segment about how power corrupts mind. So like you are completely abiding by that. Like mind, power does corrupt mind, so we have to be very careful. And especially if that power gained itself is through a corrupt method, then it has more chances of corrupting our mind, right? And okay, in like a political and like mass scale thing, when you have like that kind of power to influence people and to do that kind of impact thing, for me, if I have to tell my opinion, then I think exactly the same thing, but not in this context specifically. I never thought it from this angle about Stalin and political philosophy, because I generally don't think about things in implemented manner like religion or politics. I was thinking in a more abstract way and in general way. So basically, energy. If a particle has more energy, it will be in a more excited and chaotic state. The lesser the energy has, the calmer. This is the whole point of physics and chemistry, to get in a lesser energy state. So I was thinking in this kind of domain, and I drew this kind of analogies earlier when I was dealing with this kind of philosophies for myself, and I was making rule book and my own principles. How should I deal with this thing? Therefore, like in my own case, I for many times I try to avoid power if I get power in a way, or like try to minimize as much as the power I have in a situation. I think that in a way for me that is a very good proxy to avoid the amount of chaos I can do, and the amount of risk I can have from myself. Because obviously I do trust my rules and I do trust my principles, I do trust my ethical system enough that I can handle things, and I'm like reliable enough, I feel like that I will not create chaos on purpose. But still I don't try to test myself where it is not even necessary. So if there is a case in which I can avoid power, in which I can avoid handling such kind of responsibilities, then I try to do that, just because I don't want to test myself, don't want to put myself in this new rigorous thing. Because uh, it's I think it's like a independent and whole activity itself, managing and handling power. But regarding when people are on that stage of politician and on that level where they can influence a lot of people, then they handle tons of things, and this thing just get very shoved to see that whether you're aligning your value system with the power you have or not. Like keeping a check on the power or keeping a check on corruption, that thing is just pushed in aside, and they get involved in a lot of tons of other things, basically enjoying power, pleasure with power, and doing stuff with power, like all of the things. But the alignment part of power with the value system, the checking part, that goes into side. I can see that myself in whatever little amount I have, so I can extrapolate it to a bigger level, and I can just assume how it would be like. But yeah, this is what I think. But I have still not, in a way, found a like rule for it. I thought that this is just an innate thing. I did not thought about it in detail level, because, as I said, I don't think about political philosophy much or about religion much. So I don't even have a good enough reasoning for why this would be a case. So anyway, do you have any theory? Do you have any idea why this is the case? Why do power corrupts mind? And what?
Because it's addictive. I think that the quote is philosopher and Illuminism and philosopher of the Illuminism, Voltaire said, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely."
Yeah.
I didn't have power in my life, so I don't know for personal experience. I'm not so much knowledgeable about history, but I like history. So the case of Trotsky, Stalin, Lenin started the whole thing. Lenin had in mind some very specific idea about how communism should be, and in order to make sure that that was the idea implemented and no other ideas, he had to control the party, and he controlled it very strictly. So he had people around who were very loyal, among whom Stalin and Trotsky, both of them, but especially Trotsky was more, he liked Trotsky better than Stalin, but so Trotsky made the same mistake of being too obsessed by this idea and not what you want to really achieve through this idea. In this swapping between terminal goal and instrumental goal, you corrupt your knowledge, it becomes ideology, it goes farther away from truth. You do some tricks in order to make it look like a reasonable theory, but it's not. And the two things that motivates you to do the trick are making sure that ideology is preserved and having power for yourself. So justifying the system of ideas that put you in power. But the reason why power is addictive, I think it's biological. I think that we all like to be on top of the ladder. We all have this boost of emotions when people give us a lot of recognition, a lot of power in every interaction, and it's really addictive. It's like everything. It's like gambling. It's really then it messes with your reward system. So you want more. And you don't realize unless, I mean, for gambling, for drugs, you have all people around telling you that you are ruining your life, that you're doing something bad. When you're powerful, you don't have the same thing. You don't have the same the same mechanism, the same corrective mechanism.
Okay.
And that's the problem.
It's like the ego and love thing. So if you are in ego, then you will not even have things to consider like love. So if you have that much power, then there will be nothing that can consider you states of not being in power and having the power. Yeah, okay. And this addiction point seems like very viable, and as you said, it's evolutionary. Basically, I can see it's like one of the things that we want a lot. And I think it just, if we want to boil it down very hard, then it can just boil down to survival in a way. And similar to how we have, as humans, we just try to proxy game everything that evolution gave us. Evolution made us to survive and eat, but we overate. Evolution made us to survive and have control and power, and we over gather power. It's like the similar thing. Basically, power is obesity of survival in some way. So it's that kind of equivalence. Okay, but if we draw the thing on the other side, if we flip the thing with respect to this other person, what was that name? I'm forgetting. With Stalin.
Trotsky.
Trotsky.
Stalin, Trotsky.
Okay, Trotsky. So, what about this other case? Why the people who have that intellectualism and the principle, who are probably more able to handle power, why are they not able to gain that much of power? What do you think for that?
Well, I'm not sure if they are less interested in power. I mean, wise people are less interested in power. So they might be interested in power as an instrumental goal, but I don't think you're a match for somebody who really wants power, because the motivation is much stronger.
Okay.
And then there are few people. I mean, people who are not interested in power, people who are interested in living a wholesome life. But very few of them has this pragmatical mindset. Okay, I need some power in order to change things. They have a different mindset. Most of them have different mindset. So it happened. I mean, Gandhi had a lot of power. We talked about Gandhi. I have some criticism. I don't accept everything he wrote as the truth, as something to be followed critically. But he was a great man. There's no doubt about it. He was not interested in power. He gained power because he wanted to do some good stuff. So that's an example. Probably there are more than we realize, because our attention is caught by the negative examples, because they did terrible things, and the terrible things are what sticks in our mind more easily, probably.
Negative bias, yeah, okay. This point of yours also, again, seems very natural. So basically, if you're happy in your home, if you can make good food, you'll not go out to eat in restaurants all the time. So the wise people, they are happy and they are satisfied. They are all like in a calm state, in a satisfied state with their philosophy, with their life and understanding. So craving and for power and becoming obese doesn't seems very, like they're healthy enough to not be obese in a way. So that can be a thing. But talking about like what it does to society in general, so it's like these two kind of states that we have, in which there are very obese people and there are very healthy people, and healthy people are not getting, basically the people with enough wisdom that that they can properly control power, at least in good enough ratio compared to others. They generally don't go toward this kind of thing. This whole theory has been discussed in a philosopher king concept, if you are aware about that. Plato, philosopher king, and Marcus Aurelius also had this kind of segments and all in political philosophy. So yeah, this whole thing has come up to, but I have talked about this in a previous video as well, regarding how there's like this spectrum kind of thing and how this works. But yeah, okay. But yeah, let us now get away from political philosophy a bit and strip down from there to like individual level, on a personal level, on a specific level, regarding the property of intellect that we have. Like, okay, property of intellect is that it allows us to gain power through multiple ways, and it has showed its value in political system a lot. But on a personal level, like regarding using intellect to get power, so using intellect to have be effective in doing our goals and achieving our goals, that is obviously like very common thing, the whole scientific method thing that you talked about. So this proper thing that you're using, I think, questioning about itself, the meta questioning ability, the abstraction ability, that is the most important thing, part of intellect. Because I was about to ask you to define the term intellect itself, because as it happens in this kind of discussion, the terminology, the definition is very important. So this is one of the ways I myself describe intellect as to have meta understanding of things, to have abstractions of things. The more abstraction you are able to get of a thing, the more intellect you are have, the more logical way you are working, because that's what whole science is about, having 10 subjective experience and then making one objective abstract theory out of it. That is the whole scientific process in a way, and then testing it out, the self-correcting thing that you're talking about. So that is all very good, and that is a very good definition of intellect itself. Not going with respect to implementation to get effective, or that's a different thing, but in general, to define intellect, that's a very good way, I think. Because yeah, not just within our case, it can be applied to anything, because I always thinks about machine. So in machines also this can be applied very properly to be self-correcting. That is a process of intellect that machines should have to be able to make good abstractions, and also that's very good. Talking about being effective, so yeah, you can use intellect to get effective, because you are able to correct yourself to be more effective. You can form a recursion kind of thing. Again, that is very essential for any kind of logical process, be it in machine or be it in humans. But the point that it goes to deviation is the why thing. Like if you don't have good enough value system that you can correct yourself to, so it's not that you need self-correcting method, you also need a benchmark, a standard to correct yourself towards. And that is the why system that you have, the whole value system that you have. And so yeah, intellect is important for effectiveness and being effectively effective. That is all good and nice, that is done. But now, like again, I think transitioning to the second point, and also the why part. So this how and why both obviously go hand to hand in a like DNA thing. You cannot just have a good amount of why but not how, and they should also be mixed together. So this part where you mentioned that the self-correcting part, as you said, in science, like the standard that we have is objective numbers, is physical reality. We have to correct for that, as Payman said, if your theory doesn't match your result, then your theory is wrong and all that stuff. So but with respect to personal value, but with respect to human life and trying to be effective, let's say, to do good for the world, that kind of effectiveness, if we see about effectiveness in that way. So then finding this value system, so finding this why. So in this kind of situation, the why becomes as essential as how. So wisdom, I would say, I don't know what should be the counterpart for intellect. Wisdom or ethical system or moral system, that becomes as important as intellect, so that we can properly match them together and always keep on correcting. So it doesn't happen that we got one tangent and we just completely throw ourselves to that tangent, and we in the end we end up doing something that is completely not effective, but we are using all the intellect to do that thing. We are self-correcting. So in machines, it happens a lot of time, like optimizing for a wrong goal, switching the terminal and instrumental goal. So always keeping ourselves to align to a terminal goal is an important thing. And now I think that comes to the second part that we talked that day also, the value and preference alignment. So firstly, as I talked in my video as well, forming the principle is very important. The principle system, the value system that we will work with. And in this kind of situation, I think we can just specify it to being effective at being able to be impactful, because I think in this conversation of ours, we can just take this as a postulate, as a given axiom, that being impactful is the best kind of impact that we can have, is the most effective thing we can have, because again, it is something that should come naturally. But yeah, I think we can just take here. So yeah, the whole, okay, I'll try to condense. The whole thing is how can we have a value system that we can use as a standard, as a benchmark, to always self-correct our effectiveness too. And how can we also have the value system and at the same time have the alignment part continuously going on, basically the value preference alignment system. Yeah.
Okay, so you want a system that allows you to check your
Effectiveness.
to check whether you are effective or not, but in checking it, you are referring to the value system, of course. I mean, what values are you effectively promoting? Okay, human life, human happiness, human flourishing, animal happiness.
Okay. So it also depends upon, basically, like if we have to again take the example of science, then if we are on Earth and we are working with Earth variables, then we have different kind of realities that we work with, and we self-correct to different values. But if we are working on Mars, we will have different values to self-correct the science too. We'll have to like self-correct the science to different gravity, to different pressure. So given the different kind of people that there will be different value system that they will be self-correcting themselves to. So we are not being very much specific to any specific kind of effectiveness, as you said. Effective altruism, effective impact, that can be one of the ways to be effective. But in general, there can be any kind of effective and value alignment system. So yeah, my general thing that I want to get your views on is how can we have this system by which we can have this alignment between the value system that we have in whatever space we are working with. We are working on Earth, Mars, whichever value system, whichever domain, and the how and the effectiveness of the intellectual thing. Yeah.
You know, Madhusudan, I don't think we can put everything in precise words. I think that we have to rely to some extent to our intuition, to things that we all know but nobody can explain. And how can I explain that if I help people it's good, and if I make them life horrible it's bad? I don't know. I can't explain it. Well, I could try, but there is some part. I mean, I totally agree with you. And I like very much the theory that you suggested, the P3 theory, that is also centered in philosophizing, articulating, and so it's very important to put everything you can, to put it in words, precise words that we can check, that we can understand, that can be discussed, that can be corrected. It's true, but to some extent, everybody is seeing that the thing is good, that the thing is aligned. Well, not everybody, actually. That's the problem. Not everybody will see. But if you want to see, okay, you see it. And but also this gives you the problem, then you don't have an external way of deciding whether you are aligned or not. So yeah, of course there are ways that we know, the quali, the dali, the how much suffering are you preventing, how much thriving are you creating, how much happiness are you fostering, and they are very difficult to quantify. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes I don't think we should quantify everything, but sometimes it makes sense, and I think it's a good effort. And the idea, because sometimes numbers tell you when you're wrong, and you see numbers and you realize that you're wrong. So you need numbers. not always it's possible, because every time you put numbers in the equation, then you are every time you do it, you are subject to the Goodhart problem. Now, numbers are a proxy for the real thing that you want to achieve, and you might be mistaken in using the proxy. You are using an indicator. No, the quality is an indicator of quality of life. It's not quality of life. So every time you use this kind of indicator, you are subject to huge errors and also misalignment.
Yeah, approximately. Yeah, so
To some extent, you have to rely on your intuition.
yeah, okay. That is I think the bottom line that relying on intuition. But I think the whole thing that I was trying to talk for is regarding how do we form that intuition in the first place? How do we get that level of understanding of our why that it becomes an intuition for us? We don't have to think about it for alignment. Because again, if I have to talk about my ways and all and how what I described in the video, then that is basically the solution to this, that you have your value system engraved in you, or put into you embedded in you in a way that it becomes as intuitive as walking. It becomes like a very natural thing for you. That's the level of understanding you need to have of your why to work with how. But at the same time, the thing that I mentioned in my P3 thing, and as I wanted to talk regarding the articulation thing, was the clarification and implementation of that why. So basically, the more you get advanced in your how domain, the more clarification and specification you need in your why domain, so that they can properly get aligned and recursively self. For example, like when you don't know gravity, then so you need a how. So okay, you throw things from above, it will go down. That is a vague theory you have. But when you get very precise, then you need a specific, a bit more precise number. How fast does it fall? And so basically my point being, if you get advanced in your how, if you get more power, if you try to be more effective in anything, the more and more capable you get in being able to do something, the more and more specificity and clarification and articulation you need for your why. And again, that articulation is driven by intuition. So it's like you have the intuition, you know the things. Again, as you said, it doesn't have to be necessarily converted to language in your mind. You have that in your mind. But going further in with how, it becomes easier, and it is like a natural thing that you keep on converting it, a bit of them, to language. And the conversion part of language and articulation is just helpful, so that again you don't fool yourself. So in a way, you don't assume some as it happens with science, you don't assume some value of g or gravity that doesn't even make sense just because it aligns with the theory. You don't follow in the Feynman trap that you have a good enough theory, you have a good enough way of working of how, and you are forcefully trying to align your why. So basically, you don't forcefully match your experiments to your theory. That is the reason why I think articulation is more important. And that is why I was mentioning the conversion of language is more important. But it should not be like that you are understanding it in a language. You already have the intuition, you are just putting it in a more specific way. So yeah, obviously new tangent, but I think there's also importance of converting or putting into more articulation. The more articulation you put, the better you will be able to do the self-correcting thing. If the articulation itself is vague, the intuition itself is vague, the self-correcting method will become very hectic. I have tried this myself, and it always gets hectic, because you will not exactly know what to self-correct to, in a way. That's what I'm trying to say. The more precise you get about what's my goal, where I have to correct with, going through effectiveness, the better it is. And now, as the fundamental point, how should we develop this intuition of our why? And before we start to work on this tangent of how, before we try to be effective in our, and in that, my whole theory and philosophy, as I talked that day to you, the meta principle method, the realization method, to have realization of your why. If you'll just have understanding or theory of your why, it will not work out. It will be like an external motivation thing. The why that you have, the it should be an realization based, it should be intuition based. It should not be just knowledge and like you read about it somewhere and you now want to do it. It should be driven from yourself. In machines and all, I have like a whole different set of theories why should we have the realization thing. On my video segment, also have a video about knowledge to realization. How can we gain realization of something independent of knowledge? You probably, it can be just linked here at this moment, how we can have realization of things. But yeah, in my theory, in my understanding, having the meta understanding, having the meta principle of things are the things that help us build intuition. But anyways, what are your thoughts? How can we build intuition of our why, that it is strong enough that it helps us to articulate and align our how recursively? What do you think?
Well, I don't have any non-banal answer. The banal answer is by experience, by engaging yourself in the activity, by thinking about what you're doing, by being aware of what you do, why you do, and always questioning and discussing and having this kind of conversation and doing activities and then having again this kind of conversation and always relate the world of the ideas with the real world of the things you do and the real impact that you have, and that's the way to go. But no, but I have to confess I'm not very good at it. I try to be I want to be I sincerely want to be effective, but I'm not. And but I will keep trying until I have something to say.
Basically, what all you define are the elemental things. How I define realization. So basically, I give the bigger word, the general umbrella word, and you're trying the specific thing. So experience does play an important role. Exploration does play an important role. I have really written down all of this in my previous article or in my other video. That's why I'm not trying to talk about that here. But yeah, basically all of this thing does play a role, and along with that, there are other things as well. Basically, having a sense of awareness or having a sense of self in that why, in that value system. That is one of the other thing that you missed, I think. Or basically, I think what you wanted to say by awareness. So along with experience, along with all the things that you said, there is this sense of self that you need to attribute to this why of yours. So when you have that level of why, when you're that much connected to your why, then again you can go through anyhow, and then you can have the intuition thing that you can use for recursive alignment. And now, if we keep on going on this tangent, then how can we have that level of why, that level of self in why? And that whole concept of love again comes into action, because if you remember that love video that I talked about, then basically love is about being able to merge yourself or attach yourself with other things, or having that self that is malleable. So yeah, that is the whole thing that will again come back. Yeah.
But let me say a word about awareness. I mentioned awareness because it's more data that you have. If you're aware of what you're doing, if you're aware of your internal processes or thoughts and bodily sensations and things, then you have more data on which to develop some intuition. Intuition is getting the pattern, getting the pattern right. And without, it's intuition until you can articulate it. No, then it's not intuition anymore, it's explicit knowledge. But you arrive to explicit knowledge through intuition, and you have intuition by watching, by having a lot of things, watching the pattern over and over again, and then you get it. So being aware is the pattern that is inside you. And so that's important, because that what moves the thing.
That is basically what I meant by exploration word, the exploration of new domains and exploration of self. So again, basically, okay, if I have to summarize, then basically there's this FFAEE segment that I use, the short form: fundamental, fluid, abstract, endless exploration. So exploration is what you described just now: to have more data, to have more awareness, to have more understanding of various states. That is exploration basically. And endless was the segment regarding experience thing. So you need to continuously gain more and more experience for the intuition thing. You need to not just have a, I guess, theory or sense that it is true. You should know that it is true from your own experience. You should have that kind of core level of understanding. And then abstract and fundamental fluid, like that are different segments that are in context with regarding what I said, the self thing. So fundamental fluid is you should understand your why to that level of abstraction that it becomes part of yourself. You should attach yourself to that. That is what I meant by fundamental fluid in this context. So that is the whole theory I have regarding realization. Again, it's a different segment, it's a different video, it's a different article that I've written, so I'll not extract that here.
I have 10 more minutes to go somewhere. I loved it. I really loved it.
Yeah, it was great talking, but yeah, in general, it was great talking. This is exactly how I expected it to be, so that is even better. it turned out to be like that, and I hope we have more of these videos and more of these articles. It will be very
Whenever you want, I love it. I love it very
sure, sure,
much.
sure, 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 sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao.